Hi, everyone. My name is Liz, and I'm the Senior Field Marketing Manager here at Namogoo. Today, we are partnering with Microsoft to discuss the top investments and priorities for global e-commerce leaders in 2022. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll be discussing how e-commerce leaders are gearing up for 2022, their challenges around data privacy restrictions and how they plan to overcome it, how you can leverage these insights for your 2022 e-commerce strategy. And of course, following this presentation, we will hear from e-commerce leaders in a panel discussion on plans and strategies for the new year. Before we get started, just want to go over a couple of housekeeping reminders. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will answer some of the questions from the audience following the Q&A panel. Additionally, this webinar is being recorded. You will receive a copy of the recording within 48 hours following the conclusion of the webinar for you to review and share with your colleagues. Included with the recording will be a copy of the latest ebook, the 2022 Annual Global E-commerce Leaders Survey. Today, we will be joined by Ricardo Belmar, Director and Partner Marketing for Retail and CPG at Microsoft, Kevin Sakamoto, Director of Product Management and Product Operations at Dollar Shave Club, and our very own Einat Etzioni, CMO at Namogoo. Einat, we'll be kicking it off to you now.
Thanks, Liz, and hi, everyone. It's great to be here and have you join us. And I'm here today to share with you the latest insights we found through our annual survey of 200 global e-commerce leaders that we ran together with our partners at Microsoft. So we wanted to understand where online businesses will be focusing their efforts in the year ahead in terms of KPIs they are looking at, where they are investing their budget, and what are the main challenges they will face in 2022. On top of that, of particular interest was to see how the recently rolled out data privacy updates are impacting e-commerce and their ability to deliver personalized experiences. So before we start, I want to kick us off with a quote from Gartner, which speaks volumes in terms of being flexible in 2022. And they say it's going to be a bumpy road in 2022. There are no guarantees that strategy set at the start of the year will be a fit for purpose at the end. Still, by focusing relentlessly on optimization of execution and nimbleness to changing dynamics, retailers can give themselves a fighting chance of success. So we are still in the midst of a global pandemic with a lot of uncertainty ahead, and being agile with our strategies is probably the only way to navigate this. So when we did the survey earlier this month, one of the first things we wanted to find out was where brands are going to be investing most this year. And as you can see, the top 3 investments for 2022 will be in cost optimization, loyalty programs, and site performance. So companies are attempting to maximize their existing investments. This is why the focus on optimization of costs throughout the funnel, retaining the existing customers with advanced value-added loyalty programs, and making the site experience simple and easy with fast loading times. And we're also seeing a change in priorities from when we last ran the survey last year. So the 3 KPIs that have the highest priority in 2022 are average order value, conversion rate optimization, and customer acquisition cost. In 2021, the main KPIs of highest priority was customer lifetime value, conversion rate optimization, and customer acquisition cost. So average order value has taken first place at the top KPI and pushed customer lifetime value to second place from the year before. And this is in correlation with cost optimization being the highest priority for brands, whereas loyalty programs is second. So brands are trying to maximize each sale with high AOV so they can increase profits from the traffic they drive. And as a pandemic continues to drive more customers online, advertising costs are rising and competition is getting fiercer. So retailers are trying to balance the short-term metrics, such as AOV, with longer ones, such as customer lifetime value. And now let's look at their promotion strategy for this year. About a third of retailers are planning to increase the amount of promotions they will run in 2022. Another third will promote the same as they did in 2021, and only 16% plan to reduce promotions in 2022. So as competition is clearly here to stay, the continued growth in promotional activity is understood. However, as brands try to focus on cost optimization, they try to be more strategic in their promotional activity. So using social media influencers, personalizing their email promotions, as well as their on-price site promotions will better define a strategic promotion strategy. Another point we checked is where brands see the major journey frictions. As a lot of money, time, and effort is invested to bring shoppers to the site, reducing friction to drive these journeys forward is of utmost importance. And as you can see, the top two causes of friction in the customer journeys are not having enough social proof, as we see with lack of product reviews, and product search issues. The other top areas of friction in the journey are mainly related to interruptions in the journey, from pop-up coupons, browser extension, third-party ads appearing on the site, as well as lack of personalization, both on-site and off-site, and site performance issues. And now let's talk data. As we know, data is the lifeblood of online business, and personalization and online marketing has relied heavily on consumer data collection, particularly the use of cookies. GDPR introduced a major change by widening the definition of personal data, which is regulated by GDPR, to include the use of cookies. What this essentially means is that all data collected and stored within these cookies or identifiers is now regulated and requires special treatment. And this limits marketers on how and when they can use this data. And when it comes to the new iOS updates, the majority of Apple users aren't opting in to allow apps to track their activities, as they are becoming increasingly aware of how this data is being collected and used. So that means personalized advertising is getting harder and more expensive. So let's jump into the impact of the recent data privacy updates, how they impacted marketing and personalization efforts, and where e-commerce plans to invest in data in 2022 to combat this. So first, we wanted to understand how e-commerce managers believe data hinders them from providing the ultimate personalized customer experiences. And as you can see, the top barrier for providing the ultimate personalized customer experience is the ability to leverage current tools and data. The second highest barrier is the ability to personalize data in real time. So that means that e-commerce executives are saying, I have all this data, yet I'm not able to understand how to utilize it in real time. So brands need to focus on having the right tools and resources in place to be able to leverage their data and act on their data effectively. Further emphasizing the struggle that brands are facing with leveraging this data is the impact of the recent data updates that have seriously made it harder for brands across a variety of marketing activities. So we can see that across the board for brands of all sizes, everyone agrees that the reduced use of cookies and the stricter privacy regulations are impacting their website personalization, followed by reducing their ability of building audiences and segments. And in addition, the diminishing use of third-party data is affecting their ability to advertise efficiently. So how can marketers overcome this and still leverage personalization without the use of third-party data? It seems that brands are doubling down on privacy-friendly data in 2022, so to personalize their customer online journeys. And we see a rising focus in investing in data enrichment tools to give more insights and context on potential customers, as well as investing in collecting alternative types of data, which is regulated and controlled, such as PII, non-PII, and first-party data. So now that we understand where e-commerce leaders are focusing their efforts on 2022, how can we take all of these insights and apply it to this year's strategy? So as we saw, cost optimization is a top priority in 2022, with recent data privacy changes have made marketing more costly. And this is why focusing on cost optimization is so important. And you need to look at your entire funnel conversion to do it effectively. Let's start with targeting. One of the most important activities you can do in optimizing costs is to better target your potential customers at the top of the funnel. Now more than ever, it's important to be precise and spend your dollars on the right audiences. It's crucial to look at factors such as the interest you're targeting, keywords that are highly relevant to your audience, and the more granular you get with your targeting, the better you'll be at ensuring you're attracting the relevant audience. Second, as traffic acquisition channels are losing some of their benefits with the fade out of third-party data, you need to be more strategic about acquisitions. Focus on the main channel with proven success for bringing quality traffic that ends up converting, and the ones that bring in the most valuable customers. So using focused, trackable, and cost-effective acquisition channels, such as influencers, is definitely on the rise. Third, you want to look at optimizing the on-site journey funnel by finding the leaks in your on-site journey. Perhaps shoppers are dropping off at the beginning as they are less familiar with your brand and need more education on your product and services. Perhaps they are dropping off at the product pages due to lack of trust signals, such as user-generated reviews. Or maybe they might be dropping off at the cart because of lack of payment methods, shipping costs. Know where your shoppers are dropping so you can then personalize every stage of the journey to keep them on track and engaged. It's crucial than ever. And lastly, as acquisition becomes more expensive, it's important to focus on nurturing, re-engaging them on channels outside of your website. This can be in the form of retargeting them with ads on social media with the products they have viewed. You can also pair this with discount, or sending them relevant and personalized email and SMS if you have their consent. So in a world when collecting data is hard and actually being able to leverage the data in real time is even harder, more brands are turning to intent data and solutions that adapt in real time to what the customer needs, not just by allocating them to general segments, but by collecting non-PII data to understand where the customer is at their buying journey, their affinity, the predicted value of the customer, and more. They'll be able to determine their intent. So intent data does not require data platforms, data cleansing, standardization, because it acts on live journey data. So understanding the behavior and the intention of your customers and responding to that creates the highest level of personalization. We know that customer intent changes constantly, so retailers can react to it in real time to the changing needs. And the best thing is, no cookies or third-party data is needed for that. And since I spoke so passionately about it, you can see that this is what we do here at Namogoo. Our digital journey continuity platform is able to predict every single customer journey and keep them flowing by removing hesitations and automatically delivering what's needed to drive the journey forward. So our products include customer hijacking prevention, which allow brands to win more shoppers by managing journey interruptions, discovering the impact of over 500 journey interruptions caused by browser extension, coupon extensions, price comparison extensions that affect the buying journey. Intent-based promotion is able to predict the optimal minimal incentive for each session at the ideal moment of the customer journey. And this is one of the most effective ways to use intent data to reduce costs, as you may not want to extend an offer to a customer who's just in the awareness phase. So that would give you the right promotion at the right time and only when it's needed. And using personalized email and SMS lets our customers create both offsite personalized messaging and through email, SMS, and social campaigns. And it also lets them combine first-party data and site behavior to understand customer intent and deliver these incentives throughout the digital customer journey. That's it for my part. Let's dive into our panel. Back to you, Liz.
Thanks, Einat. Sorry about that. So Now for a moment for you all been waiting for. With us today is Ricardo Belmar. Ricardo helps retail organizations deliver omnichannel customer experience and drive revenue through digital transformation. As a trusted advisor and lead partner marketing advisor for retail and consumer goods at Microsoft, Ricardo works with retail tech organizations to develop go-to-market strategies, leveraging his 20+ years of industry experience, leading marketing and product teams and media and analyst relationships. A Rethink Retail top retail influencer for 2021 and 2022, and RIS News top 10 movers and shakers for 2021. He's a featured member of Retail Wire Brain Trust Panel and is a member of the Advisory Council at George Mason University Centers for Retail Transformation. Kevin Sakamoto, a former product management leader at Zappos, Target, and Lululemon. Kevin has extensive experience in A&B testing, e-commerce strategy, product team development, and site analytics. He's currently serving Dollar Shave Club as their Director of Digital Product Management and Product Operations, where he is responsible for site strategy and functionality, e-commerce consumer insights, digital product roadmap, and site analytics. Kevin is concurrently enrolled at Pepperdine University, where he's pursuing doctorate in business administration with research focused on amplifying employee voice of minorities and marginalized individuals. Ricardo and Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So on to our first question of today. Can you share with us a little bit about your top areas of investment in the coming year?
Yeah, I'll start. I would say things around better data analytics, having cleaner data, getting the ability to really improve your personalization across the shopping journey. I think those are our top areas I'm seeing. I'm also seeing for retailers that have turned their e-commerce into more of a marketplace, the continued investment in retail media networks. I think over the news in the last few weeks, we've seen a number of large retailers announcing these media networks. And I feel these aren't just about the incremental revenue from selling ad units on product pages. It's really more about the data you're going to generate from customers visiting your site and engaging with all these ad units. And in fact, for the retailers who are not just implementing these on their marketplace sites, but they're also tying it together with other media sources into one bundled package for brands. It's really about generating more first-party data, in my opinion, to help kind of fulfill this kind of end of the road, so to speak, right, that we all know is coming around cookies. And I think to a number of the points that Einat raised about what you need to do with the data, particularly intent data, to really improve that shopper journey. I think all of those are critical. And then I'd say, adding a layer of AI to just about all of these things. I mean, AI is no longer the new thing, I would argue, for retailers. Right there, we hear about plenty of projects at retailers where they're leveraging AI. I think really now what I think is happening is that AI is just becoming pervasive across all areas of retail operations. Particularly anywhere you need to analyze customer data, but even down to areas like store operations. We're starting to see AI tools that are designed to help store staff work more efficiently, to kind of be more ease at which they can overcome those mundane tasks, to be able to be freed up to be more customer facing. And then even outside the store, right? AI tools that help you with A/B testing on your e-commerce site. And it's just really showing up everywhere. And I think that's really the big area we're seeing for AI right now. And all of these things, I think, combine around what I consider to be one of the main lessons learned throughout the pandemic by most retailers, and that's that you can't take 6 months anymore to deliver a project, right? You really have to do things in 6 weeks or less. And there's now an acceptance that says you don't have to be at 100% readiness or completion, let's say, to get something out there. You want to get something out in front of customers that is maybe better than good enough, but that at least satisfies the need for the customer in some manner. And you iterate. You just keep iterating and iterating to improve until you get to as close as your original 100% vision for that tool. I think maybe the best example of that over the pandemic was how so many retailers implemented curbside pickup, where in some cases it was just a handwritten sign on a stick in front of a parking spot, right, to enable that. But over time, it evolved into a much more standardized process. So, all of these things, of course, speak to being more and more omni-channel, depending on your definition of omni-channel. But I think those are really, for me, the big areas where there's lots of investment happening.
Yeah, I fully agree with Ricardo. I was laughing a little bit about that handwritten stick, how it evolved, right? And now I'm so impressed with the signage that's out there at these areas. Yeah, and to your point about moving fast and delivering testing, and that's exactly a challenge for I think everyone. But for us at Dollar Shave Club, it's all about the data. In terms of, okay, if we have good enough data, can we develop this product, this digital product, can we release it? So, exactly to Einat's point as well, we're going to need good, clean data in order to release something that's 85% good enough for us to test and to learn and to iterate from, because without that data, we're not making those data-driven decisions.
That makes sense. Okay, so on to the next question. Aside from conversions, what are the main KPIs you're looking to improve in 2022?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, it would actually be engagement. We actually have a lot of great content on our site that people really don't know about. One of the most recent articles, for example, is how do I prevent my glasses from fogging up? And the answer is you can actually use shaving cream, right? So we're there to help our customers look, feel, and be their very best, and even things like, oh, how do I prevent my glasses from fogging up, right? Is part of that experience. So we do want to share that information with our customers, and we do want our customers to be engaged. And yes, AOV is important. Yes, conversion is important, but we also realize that, especially now, when we're all working from home and we're getting a little, exhausted and fatigued, we got to find these little micro moments to bring a little bit of joy, to everyone's life. And if we can have these funny, quirky articles, to have people not have their glasses fog up, that's what we're here for. So, we're really looking at engagement of the content on our site.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. In fact, I think I'm going to have to go to the website now and find that piece about the shaving cream to see how I can learn how to do that myself. I actually think, what Kevin, what you just said speaks a lot towards building lifetime customer value. Even if maybe in some cases we don't call that out, right, as that priority metric. And I think the survey even showed that it was no longer the top one. But I view that as not that any retailers are moving away from it, but more that a realization that there are other factors and things that you do. For example, the engagement that you just talked about, Kevin, I think is a great example of that helps to build that brand loyalty and affinity, so that over time it translates into lifetime customer value. So I think that's an important KPI I think retailers will continue to look at, even if it doesn't hit everyone's list as number one. I think it's always there in the background, because so many of the other KPIs are also moving towards helping to increase that lifetime customer value. Now, one of the other ones I'm finding more and more interesting, particularly now with retailers, I'll say maybe younger, digitally native retailers, let's say not more pure online plays, where customer acquisition costs have just been getting so much higher. Whether, we always talked about social platforms as being that quick, easy, rapid way to gain customers for new brands, but even those platforms now are becoming more and more expensive because there's competition now for just even getting ad units. So I think that's another metric that I see more brands in that category are watching, is what can they do to reduce that customer acquisition cost before it gets too uncontrollable, and particularly for younger brands that are still chasing that profitability and still in that hyper growth mode early on. That's kind of a key factor to keep in mind, alongside the things we've already talked about, like average order value and how well you keep customer engaged. I think there's some other things we'll see come up. I'm thinking some of the other questions coming up too, but I see a lot of other tactics starting to rise up now that maybe help turn that customer acquisition into more of an engagement value versus just an expense for acquisition. So I'll say a few things more about that a bit later, I think.
Great. So now let's take a step back and look back. What were some successful e-commerce strategies in 2021 that you plan to continue in 2022?
we could probably spend the entire time talking about this one, but I definitely think just that ability to pivot suddenly and rapidly. There were a lot of times, where we had a roadmap, we had a digital roadmap, we had things we wanted to do. Something happens, and we need to turn on a dime. And Ricardo mentioned earlier about speed, right? And the old mindset was, okay, we can get a product out within 6 months, and now it's 6 weeks, and you could argue that we need to make decisions and develop things even faster. So from a 2021 that will carry over to 2022, it's definitely that, being very flexible, but also at the same time having, those same targets in mind, right? We can pivot, we can move, we can adjust. I joke that I think my roadmap is more flexible than I am, but nevertheless, we should be able to keep that mindset, but not lose sight of that ultimate goal, what we have for the year.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I have to agree that that number one lesson again, right, about speed to market, agility. I think that's spot on. I kind of, when I talk to folks about this, I usually say, well, if we know what your customers' needs are today, if your answer is that you can fill that need tomorrow instead of today because you need so much time to implement, does it even matter anymore that you're filling that need? Because what's happened, right, what we've seen happen with consumers during the pandemic is that consumers are much more inclined now to just switch away from a brand because they want to meet that need right now. They don't want to wait until their favorite brand can meet it, even if it's something in terms of simple things like product availability. We've seen plenty of situations where that changes, right? And customers move and jump brands. And that's really, I think, speaks volumes to why you have to have that agility now and be able to pivot quickly, because you'll miss the window, right? You'll miss the window of when you're going to meet those customer needs.
That all makes sense. Meeting customer needs is very important. Speaking of meeting customer needs and kind of related, how much are you planning to invest in personalization in 2022, and in which areas?
Yeah, I spoke earlier about the content and engagement, and that all sort of rolls up strategically to education. We do want to educate, but in doing so bring a little joy, like I mentioned, to our customers. But you can imagine, right, when you have content like how do I stop my glasses from fogging up, and the answer is shaving cream, where do you actually put that on the site? Where do you put that on the customer journey? And if you put it right on the center of the homepage, does it make a lot of sense for a customer who is new to Dollar Shave Club, or she doesn't know anything about us, right? So personalization for us starts, again, going back to the data. Where does it make sense to provide this type of content for our customers? Because that is just one type of content that we have in this whole library of content that's quirky but useful. So I think for us, it's really going back to sort of funnel optimization, looking at the customer journey, finding out where there are opportunities to inject, that kind of joy and education, that's related to her journey, right? Because if we include something about glasses and shaving cream in the section about deodorant, it's not quite aligned. So, we're going to really be looking at sort of that customer journey and sort of funnel metrics.
Yeah, I think personalization is one of my favorite topics to get into, because we've been talking about it across the industry, right, for many years, and we see varying degrees of success. I think in the early days, we saw more, I'll call it brute force methods, and a lot of the discussion centered around how you were sending messages to a customer, which kind of meant, are your emails generic, or is your email message personalized to that individual customer? And now really when we talk personalization, we're talking about how are you personalizing across the journey, not just at that initial moment where you're trying to get the customer to engage with a personalized aspect, but now it's more about what are you doing across that shopper journey. And I think I have some slides for this one just to highlight a few points here that I always like to bring up. I think we saw some of this in the e-commerce survey that Einat just went through. And that's not the only place where you see this. I mean, you see this pervasively across so many different surveys and studies. I like to highlight this point that McKinsey looked at in a study of retail CEOs, 95%, right? So just about everyone agreeing that says, you have to personalize the experience as a priority. But what really ends up happening is that the execution varies a lot. And when you ask consumers the same question, do you feel as a consumer that you're getting that personalized experience? The numbers are much lower. And in the case of this McKinsey study, it was only 23% of consumers felt that they were really getting a personalized story. And I think that speaks to what we've been saying about cleansing the data, having the right data, making sure that the insights you're deriving about your customer is coming from however many sources you have access to about that customer, so that when you are plugging in a personalization engine of some kind, it's not just personalizing things because maybe it's the right segmentation, maybe it's the right customer. You really need to be have a sense of more reliability and accuracy that, yes, this is really based on the history of engagement with that customer. This is going to be the right message to send to them. This is the right variable, variation to the product page, perhaps, that you're doing an A/B test that you should try to put in front of this customer versus the previous customer. It really does matter at that execution level, how you do that. And if we go to the next slide, highlight just some other aspects that this has an impact on, right? It's not just, are we measuring success around, are we giving personalized journeys to customers? Let's look at the next step outcome from that. Is that customer more loyal now because of the personalization? We mentioned before how in the pandemic, customers have much higher proclivity now to jump from one brand to another. And again, there's a McKinsey study very recent that said 75% of consumers, claim that, yeah, they've done exactly that over the past year. So we know that that's actually becoming a new habit in a sense, right, for consumers, that it's easier to jump. So they're more willing to jump from brand to brand until they find what they want. So if you're the brand that can give them the personalized experience and you've invested in the right tools to do that, then I think that gives you a competitive advantage. And if we go to the next slide, other aspects, to think about around the impact of that personalization, you should see if it's working well, you should see increase in basket size. We should see a deeper engagement. I think we've talked a few times already about engagement. I think you can start to see a longer engagement with customers when the personalization is going well, because now there's less of a reason for that customer to want to explore a different brand. And if we go to the next slide and give you an example of one of those results from one of our customers, Northrop and Johnson, they've been able to track a 70% increase in charter sales from having personalized offers and personalized across the journey. So there can be some real tangible net benefits from doing that. And I think that's why we're going to see and continue to see more investment in this area.
Sorry about that technical difficulty. On to the next question. What emerging innovative capabilities related to e-commerce are you most interested in implementing to engage shoppers?
So I guess I'll jump into this one. I mentioned a couple before. One, for example, if we go to the first slide I have there around retail media networks, I highlighted a little bit about this before, and it again relates back to most of the topics we're bringing up around customer data and how that's being used and where are you getting those data sources. So in my opinion, the implementation of all these retail media networks is not completely motivated by the desire for that extra revenue. It's more about getting the extra data that you want to have around that customer journey and what that can do for you as you continue to personalize the journey. And there are good results. There's also, it may be a little more intangible, but there's also a benefit for marketplace retailers where they're getting a better relationship with the brands that they're carrying on the marketplace, because they're in turn surfacing more data about those customers that can be given back to those brands. And that helps them in turn learn about their customers. If we go to the next slide, I have an example there with Kroger's Precision Marketing Group, and they've been seeing a lot of great success in this. They view themselves as a full media partner now to the CPG brands that they carry in their stores. And I think that's an evolution of that relationship, where it wasn't just a wholesale relationship in the past. Now it's more of a hand in hand, we're on this customer journey together, presenting both of ourselves, the product brand as well as the retailer brand to the customer through this media network. And I think that's another sort of intangible benefit for them there. Other things that I think are worth pointing out here that I talk about quite a lot from what I see with retailers, we, again, starting back at that thought about the data around your customers, that really is the foundation in a sense to the shopper journey. And how do you use that to kind of elevate the shopping experience? And a couple of trends I'm seeing there around social commerce and live streaming that I'm really excited about. And I think this actually is something that I'm seeing not just in larger brands where we often tend to see the latest and greatest things happening with the bigger brands because we expect, they have more resources, they can commit more budget to it. But particularly, I think around social commerce and live streaming, there are technologies here where you don't need as large an investment to make an impact. So we see smaller retailers all the way down to independent retailers leveraging this as a new sales channel. And we mentioned a little bit earlier, I know Einat had an interesting point about influencers. And I view influencers in a couple of different ways here, because we normally tend to think of social commerce and live streaming as a domain where you see, your top Instagram influencers are the people that we expect brands to hire to be that voice for them in these streams. I actually think we're going to see a slightly different evolution of that. There will still be the use of those influencers, but I think retailers will start to realize that they have a supply of in-house influencers, particularly if you're a brick and mortar retailer, in your own store associates, because guess what? They actually know a lot about the products that are in the store because they're used to helping customers with it. And a lot of them are already inclined to be, they might have a YouTube channel as a hobby themselves. So they may already be familiar with the tools and the concepts in doing this and are eager to even try it out. And so I think over time now, we're going to see this kind of development of that frontline store associate as the influencer for a retail brand through live streaming. It's going to become a new skill set. It's going to make those employees more competitive. And if we think about this ongoing retail labor shortage, it's almost an incentive, I think, for a number of people to say, hey, if you come work for our brand, not only are we competitive in terms of the usual things around compensation or benefits, but you also get the opportunity to develop a live stream following as an influencer. I think that makes it more appealing. And then in turn, those employees, after they develop and enhance these skills, they're now more desirable by other retailers. So it turns into much more of a career path from that perspective. So I think that's going to be a really exciting trend to see with frontline staff.
If I could jump in there, Ricardo, I love what you said there. And it reminded me about the before times when I used to go to a certain coffee shop. And then, eventually the barista, they know you, they know the customers, and they have your order ready before you even get there, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But then every now and then they'll say, hey, why don't you try this tea, right? I think you'll like it because of whatever, right? And I never would have tried that if not for, that barista, because they know
of their recommendation,
Exactly, right. So I think you're spot on this.
Okay, so on to the next question. What are some activities you'll be doing to maintain and increase brand loyalty for your existing customers? Kevin, let's start with you on this one.
So for those that may not know, Dollar Shave Club, we really started with this infamous, depending on how you view it, commercial on YouTube, right? And the premise was we make effing great blades. And from that, it at 27 plus million views, it's really sort of the soul of who we are, this edgy, funny, honest company, and that sort of that continues to carry through to today, right? So if you actually visit our website, you'll see on our homepage here an ad for what's called a relationship saver, and it's a funny commercial where there's a couple and the woman, she's in the shower and then she's about to pick up her razor blade and she goes for the other Dollar Shave Club razor blade, and she just loves it. And when her partner goes into the shower, he picks up the razor and he realizes, hey, wait, I think she was shaving with that, right? So that sort of edginess that you've come to know and love about Dollar Shave Club, we're really looking to continue that and to bring that, and part of it again too, like I spoke earlier, right? It's sort of helping to bring a little bit of joy, a little bit of funniness, a little bit of humor, I should say, into our lives that we're used to. And shaving isn't always the most enjoyable of things, but if we could, remind you of a little funny commercial or a little funny fact while you're doing it, then, we feel we've done our job.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I think that when we talk about loyalty, one of the most important things any brand can do is really come up with ways to kind of personify the brand in a way that really makes sense to your customer. And I think it's exactly what you just said, Kevin. It's when you're in those everyday kind of mundane moments, right, where you don't normally think of something like shaving, right, as an exciting moment in your day, right? It's kind of mundane. It's kind of something you just need to do. But yeah, the idea that you can be in that mundane moment and it just suddenly reminds you of something of the brand that you happen to be using and it happens to be in your hands at that time. I think that really creates more stickiness. I think those are the kinds of things that keep someone loyal to the brand, because then when they do go and shop and need to replenish those supplies, what's the brand they're going to think of first, right? It's the one that gave them that memory of that instant moment when they were doing the mundane task, but it was still kind of interesting. So I think that's just such a wonderful, wonderful example. And I think that's exactly what we expect to see more brands doing to really enhance that. The loyalty and loyalty programs themselves, right? They're not about just offering a discount. I don't think customers and consumers aren't necessarily, it's not that they don't expect that. I think that they just accept that that's probably a given. So what's unique about this? There's nothing unique about just saying, join my loyalty program and you'll get a discount, right? It needs to offer something more. It needs to offer a different kind of experience. And I think brands that have significantly large percentage of revenue coming from loyalty customers, I think that's really the key differentiator. It's that it wasn't just about discounts and price. It was about what's the experience, what's the emotional feeling you get from the brand.
Yeah, that makes sense. Customers are now relating more to experience and how they feel, if they can relate to the brand. Is it something that, if speaking of Dollar Shave Club edginess, right? All the customers want to be on the edgier side and not the same side. So this all makes sense in building brand loyalty. And the next question I have is for hybrid brands. How will they bridge the gap between online and offline activities to ensure a smooth customer experience?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question to me. I really believe omnichannel is hard to define in a sense that it's not the same for every retailer or every brand. If you're a direct-to-consumer brand primarily, right, then it means something different for you than if you're a legacy brick-and-mortar retailer and you're trying to find ways to integrate and leverage your digital channels to bring more customers into your stores, for example. So sometimes the objectives are a little different, the goals vary a little bit, but I think the overall theme is that the end experience that whatever being omni-channel means for you as a retailer, that end experience for the customer has to be seamless. And I think that's the real important word out of this. It's that it's seamless. We hear a lot of people use frictionless. I'm a little bit more of a fan of saying seamless, in the sense that for me, seamless carries a different implication in that customers, right, consumers, they don't shop channels, they just shop, right? None of us, goes to buy something to think, oh, what channel do I want to shop in today? You just decide in the moment whether it's easier for you or more convenient to go online or pick up your mobile phone and go into an app, or there's a store around the corner and you want to pop into that store to look for something. It's driven more, I would argue, by the convenience of the moment, what quote channel that consumer accesses. So for retailer thinking about being omni-channel, it's really more about how do I remove any barriers for the consumer to go between those channels when they engage with me, so that it doesn't look like they have to do something overtly different or special to go between those channels. It needs to feel to them like it's just a single engagement. And I think that's really the goal for doing that. And it's about how do you take all of those connection points between these channels, make them more efficient, remove any barriers so that the customer doesn't see any challenges in going from, say, the online experience to the in-store experience or to a mobile app experience. And I like to also kind of point out in this case that, again, pandemic lessons learned, right? It's don't take the 6 months to finish, do what you need to do to meet the need today, get it out in 6 weeks, and knowing that that might only be 70, 80% of what you need, but you keep iterating, maybe 3 weeks later, you have an enhancement to it. Again, going back to that favorite example of mine, the curbside pickup examples with the handwritten signs, you go to one store, it was a stick in a bucket with cement and a handwritten sign. 3 weeks later, it was now a printed sign on a metal pole that was in the pavement. 2 weeks after that, now it's notifications in the mobile app on my phone. 3 weeks after that, I get a text message in advance of approaching the store. And maybe a couple of weeks after that, it's GPS enabled. So I don't even do anything now as a consumer, right? I just show up, park my car, and someone shows up. And all those iterations, right? The consumer was still engaged. You were still meeting the need. You just made it better in each iteration. And as you might add capabilities to that, where, and I saw examples of this with many retailers, maybe you could do that if this transaction originated online, but it wasn't built into the mobile app yet. You had to add that a few weeks later so that the mobile app now could offer the same experience that the website offered. And now the customer can move and jump between either one and still get the same experience. And still, if they want to do curbside, they want to go pick up in the store, or they just want it shipped to them, all these things, there's no difference, right? To the consumer, it's all seamless and second nature. And I think that's really the ultimate goal there in doing that.
Yeah. I'm going to start using that word seamless now, Ricardo. Like I use frictionless. I like seamless a lot better. Yeah. I love everything that you said there. I think, dialing it way back, for us, for you're absolutely right. Like, omni means a lot of different things to the retailer, right? And, our products are available in a lot of retailers now, but then there's that disconnect, between what you saw on YouTube and what you saw on our site versus the bottle or tube that you're holding in your hand. So, that's going to be, the challenge for us as well, is how do we sort of bridge that gap? We have some strategies coming up, right, to help bridge that gap, to remind the customer of our edginess. But we're definitely going to start to, move a lot faster, exactly to your point. Maybe not a handwritten signpost, in the middle of the aisle, but definitely, we'll be moving in that direction.
Yeah, that all makes sense. The smooth customer experience is really important. I'm sure for retailers, trying to make sure that between the in-store and online, it's seamless as possible. It makes a huge difference in terms of just keeping a customer and loyalty, right? Make it easy, then customers will stay loyal to your brand. All right, on to the next question. This question is a notorious issue that plagued 2021. How are you dealing with the current supply chain crisis?
I think maybe the best way to kind of start talking about this one is to kind of recognize that it's not over and it's going to continue for a little bit longer. Everyone can debate, how long is a little bit longer, right? Is it 6 months, 9 months? Is it the rest of the year? I think really the best way to deal with the crisis is sort of a preventative action, right? It's kind of like the best, and it's one of those situations where the best offense is a good defense, right? And it has to do with your planning, right? So you need to really be thinking backwards a little bit and planning as much in advance, and recognize that this is a real challenge, right? It's a challenge to be able to plan far enough out and be flexible enough in that forecasting and planning to see how can you adjust. We over the past year, we saw, I'll call them more major actions taken by large retailers, to the extent where they were even, acquiring their own container ships, right, to ensure that they could manage the entire flow all the way back to the source of getting their goods when and where they need them. Obviously, not every retailer can do that. So that means that you really need the right tools, the right planning tools, the right forecasting tools to really help you maintain that level of agility that you're absolutely going to need in order to accommodate and adjust. And then I think you also have to realize that you're not going to be able to 100% adjust all the time. There are going to be those times when you're going to get caught and there are just no options. And there really what this comes down to is how you communicate to your customer. I think if there's any positive side to this, it's that supply chain has been in the news so much, so often, and so regularly. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a customer right now that's not aware that there are supply chain issues. So I think as a retailer, you can kind of leverage that knowledge in the sense that you're not trying to communicate the fact that there may be an issue. What you're really trying to do is to over communicate along the whole delivery process, from when a customer orders something from you to when they get it, so that you're being as communicative as possible, so that when you do have that hiccup that causes an issue, or something that you thought you were going to be able to fulfill, now suddenly you can't, you have to have a means with which to communicate to your customers, especially those most loyal ones that we talked about earlier, as to what's going to happen next. What should that expectation be, and set the right honest, authentic expectation. You don't need to overcommit, because again, I think there's a little bit of a tolerance in the sense that everyone recognizes this is a problem and that we all have to accept and deal with it as consumers. But if you're not communicating that, if you're not speaking to your consumer that this is something that could be happening or that is happening and that might impact a given transaction, that's when you're going to lose that customer. And that's the risk that you run by not being over communicative in this process.
Yeah, the only thing I could add to that, I mean, obviously, like when I meet with a chief supply chain officer, that stuff is just magic. I don't know how that all works, right? So, but in terms of communication, like I completely agree. I was, shopping at at Target and then using their app, and I think that communication goes both ways, right? I was there in the curbside pickup with the nice signs, already there, and then on the app it actually says, okay, where do you want the associate to deliver your product? And it had the picture of the car, and it's a passenger window, driver window, trunk. And I thought that was pretty amazing. So I definitely think the communication goes both ways.
Yeah, that's a great example. Actually, I've been in that same situation. I've even had times when the app will tell me, I've been waiting for a few minutes and it says, we're experiencing a higher than normal volume right now. It may be a few extra minutes before an associate brings you your order, versus just not saying anything. Right. There was always the option that there could have been no communication at that point. And as a consumer, I'm just going to sit and wait. But it's much better, right, to have that communication and say, okay, now I know what's going on at least, right? I know that it's going to take longer, but I know why.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess the supply chain issue was a plus for consumers. Now they're going to get a lot more communication that they normally would get, and you guys would know where everything is or when things are coming, exactly at what time, what day. So this makes sense. And for our last question, delivering a frictionless online customer experience is key concern for online retailers, or how you guys said it before, seamless would be the word. What steps will you be taking to reduce friction on your site and increase CVR?
Yeah, real quickly, Dollar Shave Club, since we started, we've been a subscription-based company, right? And when we made the move to sort of omni, we now have the ability, as of in the beginning of last year, so you can just come and purchase things a la carte. You don't need to be a subscriber, right? You can just come in and buy some shampoo if you want. But you can imagine, the checkout flow really wasn't designed for that. So that's sort of one area that we'll be looking at in terms of how do we make that process more seamless, to be more inclusive of both subscribers and customers who just want to come a la carte.
Ricardo, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think maybe the only thing I would add is, I'll go back to comments earlier about A/B testing. And I think that's, still a very important tool, right, in understanding, what makes the best changes. I don't think that's changed or will change. I think maybe another lesson learned right over the last couple of years is maybe the frequency with which you want to try different things is now higher, in that you're going to try new things more often to see if you can learn even faster, right, what works best, what doesn't work, and then adapt quickly to that. Because again, this is all about having that agility that we've talked about a few times. And I think it also relates to personalization to that shopper journey as well. Again, making a good place to make an experience and a journey seamless is to personalize it to that customer, so that again, in their minds, as they're going through that journey, if that journey has them move from one channel to another, for example, it's still seamless because it feels personal to them. And I think that has a bit of a psychological impact there that's a positive when it's executed well. So I think all of these things, when done right, it means that the conversation now between the consumer and the brand is no longer about price, it's about value. And once you make it about the value, then you're on a good path to keeping that customer over time, and not just improving the conversion rate, against those current transactions, but you're likely to increase the order value and then have them keep coming back to you, so it becomes a lifetime customer.
Sounds good. Well, that is all we have today. And I want to say thank you for Einat for presenting the presentation, Kevin and Ricardo for being part of this Q&A panel and for answering the questions. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. Bye.